All right, guys. We're a little early, but that's actually to your bonus. This is going to be very interactive tonight. So one of the main things I want to do is unpack some nutrition myths that you may have heard. So whether you believe it's a myth or not, what I want is something that you've heard regarding nutrition that you want me to unpack tonight. So this is an example. Cholesterol causes heart disease. Another one might be calories in should equal calories out. Or so long as calories in is lower than calories out, you'll lose weight.
Eating a lot of sugar causes diabetes.
Okay, diabetes and sugar.
Diabetic.
Sugar. We'll just say high sugar leads to diabetes. All right. What's another one? One diet or another equals success. Okay. No. Okay. Come on in. Yes. Low fat. Low fat / carb. Weight loss. All right. Any others? Thing you really want to hear about? Right.
Well, I don't know how to word it, but this may be true.
Yeah.
That if you were a vegetarian, you're going to be something like perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm not.
Well,
That may be true.
vegetarian equals healthy, right? Not necessarily. Yeah, and just so you're aware, like most of this stuff is rooted in some truth. Like the best myths are the most true, right? It's the details of it that really get you. I see a hand over here. Yes.
I was told if I took too much calcium,
Mm-hmm.
it would affect my kidneys and make your arteries fill up, get clogged up.
Artery problems. Not only doctor handwriting, but spelling too.
Heart disease too.
And heart disease. Yep.
I had a quick case and that blood pressure medication because it was affecting my kidney and liver.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other dietary stuff? Nutrition 101 topics? And we've got a good list going, that's for sure. I feel like I should have done smaller handwriting. Okay, so we're going to get into some things. Myths are definitely going to be part of this, and if I don't unpack these by the time we're done, we'll definitely take some time at the end and really pull these out. Come on in, David. Have a seat. We're just getting started. So what I want to do for you guys tonight is I want to bring us back. This is the Nutrition 101 class. So I know some of you, this is your first Nutrition 101, but it's not your first class. Others of you, this is your fifth Nutrition 101. Some of you are just in it because your loved one brought you along, and that's also welcome as well. But wherever you're at, welcome. This room is already doing better than most of the rest of the United States right now. You look at statistics on what the average American eats. Most of you guys have seen my pile of sugar back there. That's the average consumption of sugar, right? And I feel like, let's see, Kyle, would you go grab a 10-pound bag for me? We'll just do a little example here and just pull it out to the front. And you can set it down and then have a seat again. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions out there. The average American consumes 350 pounds of sugar. The average American male consumes less than 1 serving of vegetable on a daily basis. And these are way out of whack with what we know to be healthy levels. So yeah, we'll give you guys a couple opportunities to guess statistically on what we should be consuming with that type of thing. So today is interactive. If you want to participate, if you want to know your score on some of these things, I highly suggest that you go to this website or pull up your camera and hover over this, and it'll give you that link so you can click on it to go to that so you can fill out our LRQ. This is something you should do every couple of months, a couple times a year. You should be logging in there, filling in your data. Not just for me, I'm not just a data collector. I don't do research studies out of this office, but I am your doctor and I want to track your progress. And this will give you a score, show your progress, whether you're at high risk, moderate risk, low risk, that you're living well or that you're maximizing your living. And that's what we want for everybody, is I want you to live in a state of maximum life. I mean, Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. And so that abundant life, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to be that catalyst, that conduit even, of you being able to live that out from a health perspective. So let's start out. Let's start out by number one, defining what health is, because that's the biggest problem, right? If we don't know what health is, how do we get there? We can travel 120 miles an hour down I-80, but if we're going the wrong direction, it's tough to end up in Miami, right? You got to be on the right road, on the right path, go in the right direction. So what is health? According to the United States of America and our populace and what most of you believes coming in here, health is how you feel. If you wake up in the morning and you feel good, you must be healthy. Absence of symptoms equals health. Not so. Because, right? Heart disease, #1 killer, cardiovascular disease in the United States. Average amount of time for you to have heart disease actively in your body before you develop your first symptom is how many years? 20, exactly. And the very first symptom is the heart attack. 63% of the time, the first symptom of heart disease is the heart attack. Cancer, 20 years of having it before you develop a symptom. At 10 years, it's considered lethal. That's almost 2/3 of all deaths that happen in the United States. 63% of all deaths happen because of one of those two diseases. And if we wait until we feel it, we're already setting ourselves up for failure. And so we have to redefine health. Health is a state of 100% optimal function and the ability of your body to heal. That's across mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual components. And so the first part of that function is what controls it, right? The electricity, the intelligence. And that's your central nervous system. The only way to know if you're 100% healthy is to know that your nervous system, your central nervous system, is healing and functioning at optimal performance. And we know that because if we sever the brainstem, disconnecting all the intelligence inside your brain from the rest of your body, it doesn't matter how much paleo, vegan, keto, vegetarian food you eat, you're not going to be able to digest, assimilate, or absorb it. But if we're perfectly connected, if this is communicating at 100%, now you get every opportunity. And this is why somebody who eats McDonald's and smokes a pack of cigarettes a day and does all the wrong things, never exercising a day in their life, can live into their 80s, 90s, or 100s, whereas somebody who ate all the right things, exercised the right way, died of a heart attack in their 50s or 60s. It's because of that disconnection there. And so one of the signs that your nervous system is not working and not working well for a very long time are these symptoms or diagnoses or conditions. If you or someone you know or love has asthma, suffers with headaches, menstrual problems, high blood pressure, depression, insomnia, numbness or tingling, neck pain, dizziness, fatigue, acid reflux, sciatica or low back pain, it is highly unlikely that their nervous system is functioning anywhere near 100%. In fact, I would argue that it never happens if those things are going on at all. If it happens regularly, it's probably been going on for at least not the problem, not the symptom, but the problem, the cause of the problem has been going on for at least 20 years, unless there's a catastrophe or catastrophic accident that kicks things off. But when you talk about nutrition, this is where we have to start, right? Because if that's disconnected, good luck getting that good food in there. But then you have to recognize what the role of food is too, right? If you have all the intelligence in the world as a contractor, and I'm given shoddy materials, can I make a great sculpture, a great building? No. Yeah, my wife is a fantastic architect, but you give her a bad contractor, she's not going to be able to pull off a very good building, even if she has the best design in the world. And so we need to give ourselves the right building blocks, right? Because some people do, even with a perfect nervous system, they sell themselves short. And you can see this among old chiropractors, like really old school chiropractors that thought that chiropractic was the panacea, like the end all be all to health. You know, they thought they could smoke, they could drink, they could eat McDonald's, and so long as that intelligence up there was running at 100%, that they could live to be 150 years old in perfect health. But most of these guys died in their 60s, 70s, and 80s because they disregarded what we know, you know, to be the principles of health and healing. That diet and exercise and nutrition, toxicity, that they all matter too. That stress levels matter too. And then they worked themselves to death and didn't take care of themselves. And so in Max Living, we've developed these principles of nutrition, the principles of fitness, principles of detox to help support the chiropractic, right? To come in alongside and say, no, there's actually a right way to do this. And so consider the nutrition, the building blocks. It's not everything, but it helps. It helps for sure. So one of the biggest things that we see is creating issues in allowing people to get healthy are these mental barriers that we create. And some of these mental barriers would be things like conflicting information or misinformation. We see some of that up here, things that you've been told that may not be 100% true or only true in specific cases and weren't fully explained to you. And so maybe that's not fully understood. Maybe it wasn't meant to be a lie, but it ended up being untrue. So it might as well have been because it just wasn't fully explained. So we want to get through that. Number two, not wanting to feel deprived. When you see somebody else having ice cream and pizza or a donut, and there's free donuts or ice cream or pizza, it's hard to say no, isn't it? The easiest way to make me eat badly is to put me at a party or a church gathering and then make it free. Everything that I could desire and absolutely free. I will indulge. You know, and you know, there's probably some bad things about that, but you just don't want to be deprived. Right? Then short-lived goals versus values. If your only goal with nutrition is to lose 10 pounds, what's going to happen after you lose 10 pounds? Yeah, you're going to gain it back. Whereas if your value is, I want to lose 10 pounds so that 10 years from now, I can be on the beach with my grandkids, tossing the frisbee or running and playing and jumping in the waves. That's a value. That's something that's going to last. So when you lose that 10 pounds, now it's not just about the 10 pounds anymore. It's about something that you actually care about and can live for as opposed to just dieting for. Next would be budget concerns. Who's ever heard that eating healthy costs too much? Right? And I will tell you this, it is absolutely true. Eating healthier does cost more than eating badly. But get this straight, and this is a writer downer. There is no gray area with nutrition. Food is either making you sick or it's making you healthy. Either or. It's not a both and scenario. It's either making you sick or making you healthy. And if I have the choice between spending on money that builds me up versus spending money that tears me down, it's a whole lot easier to make the decision to put the good foods in my body. Unsustainable diets. Anybody ever hear of the grapefruit diet? Right? you have one food and that's all you eat. Guess what? Grapefruit does not, man does not live by grapefruit alone. You could say the same about bread too. You could say the same about a donut, right? If you only eat one donut a day and that's all you eat for a year, I guarantee you'll be lighter in your coffin a year from now. That's a joke. That's a joke, right? No, eating just that donut, you'll deprive yourself of so many nutrients and so many calories that you will lose weight, but you will not be healthy. And no, I can't guarantee that you'd die within a year, but you would not be healthy at all. And then past failures definitely set us up for future failures because you start getting in your mindset that you can't do this thing. And that makes it so much harder to overcome because whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can't do it, It doesn't matter if it's the right thing that would absolutely work because you've already set yourself up for failure. So we got to overcome those things. So let's do this. First thing, how much do you value your health? How do you know? Yeah, well, and we can all say, oh yeah, I really super high value it. It's the most important thing. But what does your budget say? And what does your schedule say? How much time and money do you put into being healthy? And Americans put a lot into their sickness. The average American spends $11,000 on healthcare costs every single year. Do we equal that out or surpass it with our spending and our investment on prevention, health-wise? I hope so. But honestly, when it comes down to the budget, things are starting to get tight. Where do we start to cut? Oh, that gym membership, we can throw that away. Yeah, we don't need that. We can just work out from home. Never mind that we don't actually, right? Yeah, the grocery budget is so high. Let's see if we can save $100 by not getting the organic stuff. We cut that out. How much do you actually value your health? Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said, there you go. Your actions speak so loudly that I cannot hear the words you say. Sorry, I went fast and it's kind of light there. You guys are getting a lot of reflection from the sun tonight. Sorry about that. But yeah, your actions speak so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. Or your actions speak louder than your words. So when it comes to health, that's also true. Because it doesn't matter what you say. You can say, I want to be healthy and lose 50 pounds and maintain that for the rest of my life so I can be there for my grandkids and my great-grandkids and live the life of my dreams. But if you never go do the workout, if you never make it true in the grocery store or the kitchen, you never invest in your spinal health, you don't invest in your mental health, what happens? It goes away just like it does with everybody else. You fall into average because it's easier to go with the mainstream, the easy things, the fun, exciting things that pop off the shelves that we're already addicted to, than it is to make the right decisions for our health on a daily basis, especially when we're craving it. But that mainstream, it has an acronym. It's called the Standard American Diet, or SAD. And there's 3 problems with the SAD diet. Number 1, it's too much sugar, way too much sugar. Number 2, too many toxins. And number 3, not enough good fats, or too many refined fats, if we want to focus the other way. And so we really get so much sugar. So, trivia question. How many of these do you think the average American who drinks soda consumes in a year? This is a 10-pound bag of sugar.
Well, 1 pop has 7 teaspoons of sugar. So.
It's more than 10.
20.
More than 20. More than 25. That's a little high. Still a little high. 35. If you're the average American and you consume soda, you consume 35 of these. Break that down to weeks, and that's roughly one of these, or sorry, yeah, one of these per week. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, and not 3 a week. Divide 52. 350 by 52. What's that? Or 350 by 50? Yeah, that's a lot. So here's the thing. On an annual basis, we should be consuming roughly 3 of these. 30 pounds of sugar a year is sustainable. You can lose weight on 30 pounds of sugar a year.
Now with having sugar, when I was at the drugstore,
Yeah.
I drank 3 cans of Coke a day. By Friday, I felt like I could see the journal.
Yeah.
By Monday, I was
Yeah.
Quit drinking.
Yeah. You just cut it out. You do so much better. So yeah, we do way too much sugar. And sugar does a lot of bad things to you. Right?
Isn't there a lot of hidden sugar in the
Oh, yeah.
food
So
too?
if you take out soda, that drops to about 250 pounds of sugar a year that you consume. So the average American consumes almost 100 pounds of sugar just from sodas in a year. So if you cut out soda, now you're well on your way to being in the right spot. But the average person should consume about 30 grams of sugar a day. 30 grams is sustainable and healthy. But guess what you'd have to limit yourself to in order to do that? Basically, fruits and vegetables. But you can do meat too. Meat doesn't have much sugar. Let's talk about toxins for a second. This was last month, right? Who was that last month's class? How many toxins did I say the average American is exposed to in a day? It's not a straight number, but it was somewhere between several 100,000 and 1 million, right? And a lot of this is coming from our food supply. In what form? Pesticides. And so pesticides are one of the biggest implicators in cancer-causing agents and then hormone disruptors, so hormone problems as well. So we have to look at that. And then not enough good fats. And you look at the ratio of what, like, let's just say omega 3s and omega 6s, so essential fatty acids that our body needs. We eat so much inflamed foods that instead of somewhere between 1:1 to 4:1 ratio of omega 6s to omega 3s, can anybody guess how high that is for the average American? You think it's double that? Anybody go for 8:1?
Probably.
8:1. Anybody say quadruple that? 16:1? Oh, if you raised your hands, you'd be right. The average American is actually 17:1. Some people say it's as much as 30:1. 30:1 of those omega 6s to omega 3s. And those are essential fatty acids, things that you need. But guess what happens when you get out of ratio? Same thing that happens when you consume too much sugar. Same thing that happens when you get too many toxins. Inflammation. So, what are the 5 steps to revolutionizing your diet? Step number 1. Let's see if it's on here. Yep. Clean up your carbs. We got to cut way back on carbohydrates. Absolutely way back on carbohydrates. I would recommend going down to that 30 grams, getting it only from fruits and vegetables. You do that, man, watch your health change. Number 2, fix your fats. Watch where you're getting your fat sources from. There's a lot of healthy fats out there that are absolutely essential for your diet. Number 3, come on. Perfect your proteins. Number 4, trash your toxins. And number 5, if you guys can catch up with the PowerPoint, avoid your allergens. And this last one is one that I caught later in life. And actually it was sensitivities. Some of my mom's friends that were into natural health, they told my mom that I was probably allergic to dairy. My mom was like, it's not a big deal. He drinks like a gallon a day and has no problems. He's just a little gassy. He's a kid. He's a boy, right? That turned into bloody stool and hemorrhoids, and now I can't touch this stuff. So the sooner you catch this stuff, the better. But guess what? It's estimated that over 90% of the world's population has some level of sensitivity or allergy to milk. That is lactose intolerance, casein allergic. Like, it's
My
crazy.
brother had to go on goat milk
Yeah.
because he couldn't tolerate any other milk.
Yeah, the casein just gets to be too much, or the lactose just gets to be too much. So, yes, ma'am.
So breastfed babies are lower incidence of milk than if you have
Yeah,
the formula.
there's actually a genetic component to this. Yeah, so what we see, and it's stronger than even breastfed versus formula fed, is that if you grew up or your background is like Northern European, like Sweden and Finland, Denmark, that you're less likely And there's an area in Africa, the Maasai tribe, where all they live off of is dairy, that you're less likely to become lactose intolerant. But areas where you don't continue to drink milk for a long time after that, like everywhere else in the world, that you develop those sensitivities a whole lot faster. Now, like any genetic thing, there's a light switch effect, right? You turn that on by creating that environment, or you turn it off by exiting that environment, creating a new one. So there's some people out there whose parents and grandparents were probably lactose intolerant, but because they persisted in the American culture, they happened to keep that gene turned off and didn't develop it as much. But let's add some inflammation into that from bad dairy, and now it's much more likely to happen. And most of these things go undiagnosed because food sensitivity tests are erratic at best. The best test I know for whether or not you have a food sensitivity is actually a pulse check. Just checking your pulse when you have the food in your mouth. So you have to get a baseline first, right? So count your beats of your heart over the course of 60 seconds, and then take the food that you think you might be sensitive to, or you're just curious about, put it in your mouth, hold it there for a couple of moments, and then start checking your beats per minute again over the course of 60 seconds. If it goes up by 5 beats per minute or down by 5 beats a minute, you've created a challenge to your system. And no, you don't know whether it's an IgG or an IgA or an IgM or whatever response to it that it is, but you know that it's challenging your system, and that challenge needs to be overcome. And if that continues to be a problem, then you're going to actually end up damaging the system. Challenging the system in short bursts is usually bearable, tolerable. If I had only had milk one night a week, in just little bits, I probably would be fine. I had a gallon a day. Like, we would go through milk so fast in our household. And then ice cream all the time, butter on everything. It's not that those things are bad for you. It's that with me already having that established sensitivity, it just got worse and worse and worse with no break. And that went all the way through my 20s. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s that it really started to show itself symptomatically. So those are the 5 steps. Those are the things that we need to do individually to be there. And these are things I can't do for you, right? You have to choose to do them on your own. I can't go, not each of you can take you home with me and have me go through your pantry every night after every grocery trip and say, great job tonight, Tara. You did a knock-up job in getting the right foods in there, right? I can't be with you on the car ride home as you pass by Wendy's and McDonald's and Arby's and, all these different stores and say, what they do is so awful, just all their advertising, trying to sell you cheap knockoff food that has no nutritional value and is loaded with bad fats and sugar. You're like, you're right, Dr. Jake. I shouldn't stop there.
Yeah, even when I bake my sponges, I use olive oil,
Yeah.
and that's better. Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of things. And here's one thing that you guys should recognize is we could sit down, we could go through the keto diet, we could go through paleo, we could go through vegetarianism, we could go through the research on the Mediterranean diet, but the research on nutrition, it's pretty all over the place. There's not one single entity that really does a great job of funding nutrition research. There's some more, but most of it's influenced by the food industry very heavily. Very heavily. And you want to see some pro-fat stuff, you look at the beef, the cattle farmers. You want to see some pro-sugar stuff, look at the sugar industry. And they'll tell you that's the best food in the world for you. And they'll have research to support it. But it's all contradictory. So we really do have to go back to nature. But what the research says, almost to a point, is that if you make the foods yourself, not in the microwave with plastic wrap over top, but make it yourself from scratch, especially. That doesn't matter what diet you're on. But if you're getting the prepackaged stuff, it's less effective. If somebody else makes it for you, it's less effective, unless that person's sitting next to you and really cares about you, right? And so really, one of the big keys to revolutionizing your health is going to be to make your own food, to fall in love with cooking. I mean, we've lost this relationship that, historically we had with food. And even if it was a breakdown where the woman spent the time preparing the food that the man caught, which is kind of the paleo model, right? The old patriarchal model of, you got your hunter-gatherers, the man's a hunter, the woman's the gatherer type of thing. Yeah, even in that model, you knew what you were eating. If you were hunting, you wouldn't kill the sick animal and consume it. You wouldn't cut the cancer off of it. You might put the animal down, but you wouldn't consume that thing. And we've really gotten away from it. When I lived in Atlanta, I would hear all these horrible stories about just kindergartners and grade schoolers and thinking that their food came from the grocery store. Like, no, that's where it came from. Like, there was no step before that. Like, it was just grown and here you go. And, it's really pervaded our culture. Now, we're a little better here in Nebraska because we live off of farmers, right? And historically we have. But even those farms that we live off of, you get out in western Nebraska and you see some of the way that the food's being raised. It's like, that's not God's design for this. There are better ways of doing this. So let's address a myth. I don't think it was there on that list, but I think it's one that we all have in the back of our heads if we haven't addressed this already. It's that if I have bad genes, or I have bad genes, so if my parents were sick, then I will suffer the same fate, right? My dad and granddad and great-granddad all had heart disease. I'm destined for heart disease. That's what a lot of us believe. That's what our medical system teaches, right? Well, you better not, because whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. You can think your way into this stuff. But yeah, this is the old genetic model of disease. We thought when Watson and Crick were figuring out the DNA, and then we broke down the human genome after that we would find genes for cancer, for heart disease. And when we found those genes, we would find the cure for all of these diseases. But guess what? We're not so much different from a fruit fly. We have like just a couple thousand more base pair combinations than the fruit fly does. And what we've discovered as far as genetics go, even when we do have a condition, like there's a breast cancer gene, I believe it's called BRCA, is that right? Even when you have that, you're only a couple of percentage points more likely to have breast cancer than someone that doesn't have the breast cancer gene. That someone who doesn't have the breast cancer gene can still get breast cancer. It's not the cause. And what we find in genes is that having the gene for a specific condition doesn't necessarily mean that you have that condition, but that if you create the right environment for that gene to turn on and express itself, then it will. The environment determines the expression. It's called epigenetics. It's the new thing in genetic field, but not something that a lot of people spend a lot of time on. Cancer research is starting to go there, We're starting to see that. And you can see even with like when the NFL, now they have the rainbow of colors in October where it used to just be pink month. If you go to their website, it actually has a questionnaire that you fill out to assess your cancer risks. And it's all lifestyle stuff because we know that over 90% of cancer is due to lifestyle factors because cancer, the genes for it are turned on or turned off by the lifestyle you put in there. And so those 5 things I talked about nutritionally are things that you can do, things that you have control over. So really what it comes down to, and I said this earlier, is inflammation. And what is inflammation? A quick example of what inflammation is what happens when you turn your ankle, when you twist your ankle, when you sprain your ankle. What happens to the ankle? It swells up. It swells up with what? With water and blood. Blood, right? You get the blood going there. The immune system, your human immune system, the nervous system is reacting to the injury by bringing more blood to the area. Inflammation in the short term to an acute wound is very good. In fact, we see with the turned ankle, if you really just leave it alone and let it rest, that it heals faster than if you do what I was taught to do in school, which is RICEs, rest, ice, compression, elevation. We actually see it does better without those things. If you just leave it alone and let it heal, but we don't want to do that. So we take an ibuprofen to lower the inflammation, maybe wrap it up, compress it down so you can fit it into your work boot and you run off to work again. and you continue to injure it over and over because now you're creating a problem, a more chronic issue where that inflammation sticks around longer because the wound hasn't healed properly. That's the same thing that's going on when we eat too much sugar. Not only does it increase your inflammation in your body, it elevates your glucose and insulin. All right, so I think that's one of these. Increased sugar leads to diabetes. But let me address this one real quick. Does everybody who eats too much sugar get diabetes? No, only 2/3 of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Only. So the average one of us, yes, that's true. But it's not 100% the case because it still comes back to how well you're functioning, right? And there's other factors besides just sugar, like exercise. If you're somebody who exercises at a high level, somebody like LeBron James or Michael Phelps, they actually do better on a high carbohydrate diet than the average American because their body needs that quick burst of energy. You know, LeBron James actually did go keto for a summer and he lost like 40 pounds. He looked like rail thin. It didn't look good on him. So he switched his diet back up and started eating for the season. But most of us aren't playing an 82-game professional basketball season every year, are we? No, anybody in here? Did I miss that with any of you? Because I'd like your autograph afterwards if we are. But, you know, when you eat a high sugar diet, if you're not using it, it basically creates a toxic environment in the liver. It creates toxic environment in your pancreas, toxic environment in the cells, inflammatory environment in your whole body. We see elevated glucose and insulin all over the place. Starts damaging the brain and is one of the main factors that we see in Alzheimer's disease. That plaquing is caused by the inflammation due to increased sugar. Damaged fats, kind of the same thing. We addressed this with the omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid ratio. What about highly processed fats? What's a processed fat? It's basically a fat that didn't come directly from its source. If it had to be heated or machine rinsed from its natural source to get there, it's probably a toxic fat or a damaged fat. Something like olive oil is a great fat for you, but if you heat it up above like a medium low or low heat, what happens to it? It starts smoking. And that smoking, it actually denatures the fat and it becomes one of the most toxic fats out there. Canola oil. Anybody know what plant canola oil comes from? Rapeseed. Not the canola plant because there's no such thing. Canola stands for Canadian oil low acid. Rapeseed is just really hard to market because we have a really negative view in our culture of rape. Rightly so. Hard to sell something that says rapeseed, but it's a highly toxic fat. You know, really most fats that come from seeds, if you were to just eat the seed, is really good for you, but to pull it out of the seed in a big enough amount to get it into this bottle, it's going to be denatured by the time it gets there. And that could really be said to be true of any oil. It's going to be healthier for you in its original source than it would be if it's pulled out. So even something like coconut oil or olive oil, where it's much easier to digest than some of these other ones, that's much healthier for you. It's much better in the coconut or in the avocado than it is coming from that bottle. Get it in its natural form. If you want olive oil in your food, best way to get it there is just put olives on your food. If you don't like olives, I guess you can do some olive oil, but just make sure you're not heating it up too much. Toxins, we kind of addressed this, creates inflammation, and then sensitivities and allergens. If you've got a food sensitivity and you start adding more and more and more of that to your system, it creates more and more inflammation. Allergens, you see that right away. Peanut allergies, you get these big bloated, that's inflammation happening. That's your immune system responding and creating inflammation in a way that's can actually kill you. Right? Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right? Too much of a bad thing will just kill you faster than too much of a good thing. All right. Yes.
So my diabetes is stressing me. It's like I can have normal sugar here, go out and eat, and it goes up 150
Yeah.
points like it can happen.
So it probably wasn't the cause of the diabetes in the first place, but that's speaking to the hormone component of how diabetes works. Yeah, the cortisol elevates the blood sugar even without there being any dietary introduction of that.
They should
Stress. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Counting calories is an effective way to healthy nutrition, or replace healthy nutrition with weight loss. Yeah, can you eat the donut diet and lose weight? Yeah, you can. Is it healthy? No. No, in fact, if you're looking at calories, 22 almonds is approximately 153 calories. One Twinkie is approximately 150 calories. So by this is the less healthy meal choice, right? It's got more calories. Now, calories are just energy units. And what we find with a nutritionally dense food like almonds, those 153 calories will fill you up so you eat less calories. If you give me a bowl full of almonds, let's say it's 150 almonds, and you give me a plate full of Twinkies of the same caloric value, which one do you think I'm going to stop with first calorically? Almonds. I'm going to get filled up faster. My body's going to get what it needs faster. I'm going to finish that plate of Twinkies unless I just vomit it up because of how bad it is for you. I haven't had anything that processed in years, maybe decades at this point. But yeah, it's not true at all. And what we see in the history of the United States and how we've produced our food is that we vilified fat in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And so all the food manufacturers pulled that fat out of there and they said, okay, now our food tastes like cardboard. What do we do to make it taste good that keeps it low fat? Let's add some sugar. And so now, anytime you see the low fat label, what should you do? Run as far away as you can. Run as far away as you can. So that's this one. Low fat, low carb leads to weight loss. So on the other hand, if it's a low carb food, it's higher in fat. What kind of fat is it? So there are some, like sometimes you want some barbecue potato chips. I say that from experience, right? You want to get low carb. So you go, let's go sweet potato, or let's go cassava flour, right? But if I deep fry that in canola oil, it can be super high fat and super low carb. Is it good for me? No. Let's say I put in coconut oil. A little better. Still not the best, right? Because I'm deep frying it. If I bake it in canola oil, there we go. Or canola oil. Coconut oil. I said the wrong one. I could hear you guys catch me over here. Yeah, if you bake it in coconut oil, now you're going the right way. Bake it in avocado oil, now you're going the right way. All right, it makes a difference. So we're getting so many sugars. What's worse than sugar? Any guesses? Artificial sweeteners. I'm not here to pick on Splenda. But if it's not sugar and it's artificially made to taste like sugar, it's not real. And we could do a deep dive on how bad each of the different things are and in what ways. Basically, it's this. When it's not real sugar and your body tastes sweet, it starts looking for sugar. It looks for sugar by sending insulin out. And so now you create this condition of hyperinsulinemia, which is Latin for too much insulin in your blood, which is one of the ways that they measure for diabetes. If you have too much insulin in your blood over a prolonged period of time, you can give yourself diabetes. This is part of the reason why you don't see healthy people drinking Diet Coke. Except on the commercials, right? And it's probably their stunt double. But yeah, no, these things, they go in and they mess with you hormonally. Plus, a lot of the side effects, some of the ways that it breaks down can create, really toxic environment. In fact, I would rather have you drink Coke than Diet Coke. I would rather have you drink Dr. Pepper than Diet Dr. Pepper. What's better than that? Water, right? Let's go all the way to the right side of it. Let's get some water in our diet. But if you want something that's not going to challenge you, what can you use as a sweetener? Well, something like stevia is a great replacement. Now, the best form of stevia would be this form, right? Get the leaf. I have some tea back in the back that one of the ingredients that they put in the tea is actually stevia leaf. Now, what are you going to see in most foods, processed foods, that say that it's sweetened with stevia? Probably not going to say stevia on the back label when you turn around and you look at the box. When you look at this nutrition label and you go down to the ingredients list down there, it's going to say Reb A. And Reb A is the extracted version of the stevia plant that gives it the sweet. That's also going to spike your insulin. You don't necessarily just want the sweet. You want the whole plant. That's the same is true for every fruit. Orange juice is way less healthy than the orange. Heck, if you were to eat the sugar cane in this amount, I would have no problem with it because it comes with so much fiber that it protects you from the huge doses of sugar inside. Guess what? If I put this in a cake, you guys would probably all be able to finish the cake within 24 hours. If I put the sugar cane in the cake, even if I ground it up into the same little granules, hardly anybody would be able to have more than one piece in the same amount. And it's because of the fiber that protects it in there. So get it in its natural form as much as possible, even with the safe sweeteners. Some of the other ones that are safer would be something like monk fruit sweetener. Monk fruit sweetener. Monk fruit sweetener is a really good one. It's actually pretty decent for baking. A step beyond that would be your sugar alcohols. And you have to watch yourselves for this one because sugar alcohols can have a very strong digestive effect. It can really flush you out if you get too much erythritol or xylitol at a time. We have a recipe I love for chocolate cake. Some of you have been around long enough that you've had it in the office. I've had it for different celebrations here in the office. Even some brownies, and it's sweetened with erythritol and xylitol. And back when I first was introduced to all this, I was looking for the natural sweeteners. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I would eat the whole cake by myself in like one sitting. And I was on the toilet a lot for the next 24 hours. Yes, sir.
Could you say that sugar again is monk fruit?
Yeah, monk fruit sweetener. Yep. And then after that, erythritol and xylitol. In that order, I prefer erythritol over xylitol. Xylitol actually has some really beneficial dental benefits as far as calorie prevention, cavity prevention, but it does have a stronger digestive effect than the erythritol does. But some people respond differently. And that's the one thing that I've noticed getting into this is you learn all this stuff in school about how everybody's the same. Then you get out and you start practicing. And it's like, no, actually everybody's different. And you have to find all these little differences. So watch your response to some of these things. Some people will have that same response to stevia or to monk fruit. After that, you want to look at your more natural sweeteners. Those 4 that I just listed would be advanced plant approved. After that, you're finding sweeteners that actually have fructose or glucose in them. Things like coconut palm sugar, things like raw honey, or grade B maple syrup. They're a little easier on your system because they come with more nutrients inside, things that will protect you from the sugar. But on the other hand, it is still sugar. And you still have that glycemic effect and you still have that insulin effect. And especially for my diabetics in the class, you want to look out for even the healthy sweeteners in that category. So if sugar is so bad, yep. So fat makes you fat. Right? That's the next one. So let's see, is this covering any of these? Not really. So let's go back to this. So this is another fat makes you fat. So anybody hear of the ketogenic diet? The ketogenic diet? Yeah, you've heard of it. Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have lost weight eating mostly fat. And really on the ketogenic diet, you're getting upwards of 60% of your calories are coming from fat on that diet. Now, it's not for everyone. I'm not sitting up here and saying that's the best diet. In fact, it would be the worst choice for me because most keto diets are very high in dairy. And I can't do that. Yes, ma'am.
My kidney doctor told me never go on a keto diet.
Yeah, and that might be true for you. It might be absolutely true. There's certain health conditions where going on the keto diet could be fatal. You know, ketogenesis turns into ketoacidosis really fast. So we have to watch out for that.
You know, I have a very healthy friend that died from keto
No, and
because they did not realize she was keto.
yeah, and so if she wasn't a very healthy friend, it's
You used to look
we
at her,
yeah,
think so.
you'd think so, but yeah, it's super sad because we need to keep these things in context. If you eat a healthy diet, you don't need a keto diet. But if you let yourself go and you're looking for a way to lose weight fast, that's where you usually get yourself into trouble. People start starving themselves, create an unhealthy relationship with food. It can go both ways. You can have an unhealthy relationship with food making you fat, and you can have an unhealthy relationship with food making you skinny, and both ways can kill you. Right? So we develop a healthy relationship with food. Food is there for our nourishment. It's there for our building blocks. It's not a quick way to lose weight. It's a way to sustain life. That's what God intended it for. So what are your good fats?
Olive oil,
Olive oil, avocados,
coconut,
coconut, yeah. Eggs. Yeah, no, there's a lot of really good ones. I would just say naturally occurring fats, fats that are raised the right way or produced the right way. Those are going to be your healthier ones. Your unhealthy ones are the ones that are processed and denatured. You know, like we talked about, the canola or the seed oils can be really highly toxic. What's the least healthy oil? Anybody think of it? It's on movie theater popcorn.
Oh my.
Movie theater popcorn is usually buttered with cottonseed oil. Yeah, and the reason why I say it's so unhealthy is because cottonseed is not regulated as a food because it's not a food product. But cottonseed oil can be extracted and used as a food, and so oftentimes, yeah, it's denatured in the processing, but it's also highly toxic with pesticides because they can use non-food grade pesticides on cotton seeds. And so it's just so much worse for you. So if you're going to the theater and you want popcorn, bring your own. It's not worth. I'd rather be kicked out for having my own food than eat the movie theater popcorn. All right, so this is another one I get a lot. So fat in meats causes heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. This is one of those that's true, but not fully true. All right, because we see cultures around the world, like the Maasai tribe in Africa, that all they do is they live off of cows. They raise cows, they use the butter, or they use the milk to create butter and cream, and they have that, and they use every part of the animal. They eat the meats, they eat the organs, they use the bones for different stuff, and they live in a part of Africa where you can't grow food, like you can't actually have vegetables, and so this is all they sustain themselves off. Same thing like in the Arctic, people living off of basically whale blubber, right? They eat the whole fish, and they use all the bone parts, and they don't have cancer and heart disease and osteoporosis and kidney disease. But what's the difference between the meat that they're eating and the meat that we're eating? Exactly. Where is it coming from? So our conventional beef, if anybody's ever driven now I-80 West, is raised how? Get far enough west, and you get these big black patches of land that only have cows and feedlots, essentially, right? Right, so they're not raised the right way. And you look at a cow that's raised on corn in a feedlot, and its fatty acid profile of omega-6s to omega-3s. This is just it. I'm not talking about antibiotics. I'm not talking about hormone use. Just their fatty acid profile of omega-6s to omega-3s is 30 to 1 on average. But what is it for a grass-fed cow?
What was the last thing you said? What was the-
30 to 1. 30 parts 6, omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. Grass-fed,
6 to 1. I can't remember.
it's 1 to 1.
Oh,
Sometimes it'll drop as low as 4 to 1. And that's not even the perfectly grass-finished cows. That's just the ones that they go 80% of their lives, grass-fed. Now you go 100%, now you get to that 1 to 1 ratio. You can fix a lot of things by just switching your beef and your dairy products to 100% grass-fed. A lot of things. You don't even have to give up burgers, right? And so we have to jump into that. So which animal products are we looking at? Beef is number one because we're in Nebraska. We're the beef state, I guess. And I thought we were corn huskers, but apparently we're all about the cattle. But yeah, we need to get our beef grass-fed. Everybody's like, well, I eat chicken. Don't worry about it. Well, you are what you ate. What's that chicken eating? What's chicken supposed to eat? Bugs. It's supposed to grub for bugs. Maybe you'll get some seeds on the ground too, peck at some different plants. But the main thing it should be getting is bugs. Most birds are carnivores at some level. They eat living things. But we're feeding them corn and wheat and these nutrition pellets that have everything a chicken needs to grow as fat as possible so the farmer can make a profit. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a farmer making a profit, but it's not sustainable nutritionally for us if we want to stay healthy. So free range chickens, that's like they get outside and they walk around and they grub for bugs and they get actual sunlight. Guess what? You start getting vitamin D3 from things that get actual sunlight. If they're stuck indoors for most of their lives, they're not getting that D3 in there. Wild caught fish. And this is even becoming harder and harder to find because the oceans are becoming so polluted. You look at all the plastics in the oceans anymore, and now you can't even say that wild caught fish are that much better. But farm raised fish, what do? They just put a big net around an area, and then they drop food pellets in. Corn and wheat and nutrition, all in that perfectly scientifically formulated for us. And then natural source of dairy. So again, grass-fed with the dairy as well. Because this is really, when you look at this, what else is there? Pork. It's not on the list for a reason. Because even organic, free-range pork is one of the most toxic meats on the planet. You look like they're great animals. They make great pets. They really do. Like you get those teacup pigs and they're super intelligent, easy to train. But you look at the meat content, and one of the most highly parasitic meats on the planet is pork. So no, I don't recommend bacon. That's one of the problems I have with the keto diet is everybody's like, oh, bacon, 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 bacon. I mean, you want an acidic meat that's full of parasites, go for it. Yeah. Yep. I get beef bacon and I get turkey bacon. And I cook it extra crispy with coconut oil or avocado oil. That's where I go for my bacon. Chicken sausage, turkey sausage. That's where I go with that. You need 5 to 8 servings of grains every day for a healthy diet. This would be a high carb diet. Now, we look at when Jesus said man cannot live on bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God, he was not talking about modern wheat. He was talking about a wheat called einkorn wheat. Einkorn wheat was actually very low in gluten, very low in gluten, and very high in a lot of nutrients, B vitamins, had proteins in it. It was very robust, and you could actually sustain life on einkorn wheat. But what we've done since then is we want to, just like with our chickens, right? We want a bigger yield for the farmer, And so we grow more by hybridizing the plants and genetically modifying in some cases so that they can handle more pesticides so we can produce a larger yield. And the argument is we do that to help feed the world because most of the world's starving, right? Now, most of the corn and wheat in the United States doesn't go to overseas. It's consumed here in the United States. Most of us eat it. And so we've got a very high gluten wheat. But on top of that, even if you're going to this, you have an enzyme in your mouth called salivary amylase, whose only job that I know of, I could be wrong, I'm learning more every day, is to turn carbs, or specifically wheat, grains, into sugar. And it absorbs into the bloodstream before it even hits the digestive system, or the lower digestive system, the stomach and the small intestine and large intestine. And so you affect your blood sugar just by eating wheat. Dr. Oz did a unofficial science experiment probably about a decade ago now, where he had 5 of his viewers that were in the audience consume Snickers candy bar, and 5 of them consume just a slice of whole wheat bread. And the people that ate the Snickers actually had lower blood sugar an hour later than the people that ate just the slice of bread. And that's whole wheat. Like if you're going to have grain, like it, whole wheat, whole grain, nothing else added to it. But just because of the way that your body handles it, it turns it into sugar right away. And so really when I say you need to curb your carbs, it's not just the processed sugars. It's not just the sodas. Absolutely, start there. If you're drinking soda, cut that out. You cut off 100 pounds of sugar a year. But if we can then go in and start to cut back on the grains, right? In Nebraska, it's going to be corn too. It's also rice. Even something like quinoa is a grain that turns to sugar in your digestive system. We need to look at that as well. Let's get into heart disease, shall we? So who's heard this myth? Whose doctors told them this one? Cholesterol causes heart disease. So this is actually based off of old science. We thought it was true for a really long time. Because why? Because when we cut open arteries of people who had heart attacks and died of strokes, we were finding all this cholesterol in the plaque, in the arteries, and in the veins. So, must be the cause. Well, that was before we understood the role of cholesterol. So cholesterol, number one, when you find it somewhere, let's say when you find it on your skin, it's oftentimes at the site of a wound, and it makes up the scab. It is present where a wound happens. And so let's say you eat a diet that's high in carbs, high in processed fats, and high in toxins, high in pesticides. What's going to happen to the blood vessels? They're going to become inflamed. And if you get too much inflammation over a sustained period of time, it's actually going to wear away at the blood vessel lining. It's going to create a wound inside. And the worse that site of inflammation is, the more wound's going to happen. And so your body, right, the innate intelligence inside you is actually going to send cholesterol there to patch the wound. It creates a scab. What happens if you pick that scab off? By leaving the inflammation there, by continuing to do the same things that created the wound in the first place. More goes there. And it keeps going there, and it keeps going there. And then eventually what happens to that blood vessel, I think I've got a picture here, is it starts clogging up. It starts clogging up in there. And so the cholesterol didn't cause the heart disease or the heart attack any more than rats or flies cause the garbage. In fact, in this case, the cholesterol is more like the garbage man. It's going in there to help heal the damage. But because we continue to create it, it just builds up more and more and more, and eventually can lead to heart disease. And so the real model of this is the oxidation of cholesterol causes heart disease. And what creates the oxidation of heart disease is inflammation. And so it's the new inflammation model of heart disease that we're going with. Oh, this is a good one. So who thinks the FDA and USDA have your back? I'm glad that nobody actually thinks that, because these regulatory agencies have literally, when you look at all the drugs that have ever been removed from the market for safety reasons, they approved those drugs in the first place. Who are they run by? They're run by former industry heads, former industry executives that once they retire, go back into the industry. It's a very corrupt system when it comes to food and drug and Department of Agriculture. It's not there for us, it's there for companies to be able to make a profit. Now, there is some safety component to it. If the FDA says you should not take aspirin to prevent a heart attack, guess what? I listen. When the FDA says we're removing this from the market because of these side effects, I listen. Because for them to say it, it's not just true, it's really, 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 really true when they're saying something bad about a drug or a food. So they're really not there for us. And then you look at the amount of pesticides, toxins that we take in, it's just ridiculous. So another myth that we have to bust here is that eating healthy is boring, tasteless, and too hard to do. No, healthy food has more flavor. And this is where we need to create that right relationship with food. I love cooking. I love baking, not because I grew up loving cooking and baking. I love it because making good food for other people is fulfilling. You know, my family first, right? When my kids, but when I put the time and energy into getting the spice mixture just right, and people appreciate that, there's a social component to this that goes beyond even just giving myself the right nutrients. Now I'm helping other people get those right nutrients and building that up. It's kind of like being a chiropractor in a lot of ways, right? You get that right mix of how to move people's spines into alignment and see their lights turn on. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm helping people be healthy, live longer, and do everything that they were created to do. So we have 2 nutrition plans that I generally recommend that people start with. Obviously, you have to customize this within your own needs, and I'll help you do that. But the first is healthy eating for healthy families, nutrition for healthy families. That's our core plan. To summarize the core plan is if God made it, eat it. If man made it, leave it. Eat foods that God made, and almost doesn't matter how much of it you eat. Obviously, you want some balance in there. All good things in moderation. Cut out the bad, all good things in moderation. It's for health maintenance, disease prevention, and a lot of people, because it is so different from the standard American diet, will sustain a moderate amount of weight loss. The advanced plan, this is for people that are really struggling with their health. This is for people that need hormone repair, that they're resistant to weight loss, that know that they have inflammation and disease. If you're on medication for diabetes, heart disease, cancer, you know, any of those advanced conditions, that one's for you. If you're looking to lose weight fast, this goes faster. And then complete health restoration, because it goes in there. And those keys that I talked about, curb your carbs, fix your fats, trash your toxins, perfect your proteins, and avoid your allergens. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. There's no calorie counting. There's no portion measuring. You eat real foods until you're full. Now, do I want you to get more vegetables? Yes. You should be getting about 5 servings of vegetables a day. Do I want you to eat more fruits? Yes and no. Some of you eat too many fruits because they're sweeter. Do I want you to eat more meat? Not necessarily. If you want to be vegetarian or vegan on the advanced plan or on the core plan, you can do that well. You just have to pay attention a little bit more to things like vitamin B12. And if you've got, you know, joint damage inside your body, maybe looking for sources of collagen that aren't as readily prevalent in the diet. You might have to try a little harder to get more protein in there. You know, fats are actually not hard on a vegan or vegetarian diet. You're just getting not animal fats with that process. So I think we're answering most of these questions.
Like those cereal packets with a handful of honey nut cereals might not be good, or
So, I mean, did God make it? Did you make it from scratch? If you can make honey nut Cheerios from scratch, you have my permission to eat as much honey nut Cheerios as you want. If you can make a Snickers bar from scratch, you have my permission to eat your Snickers bar as much as you want. So the advanced plan is pretty basic. So sugar and carbohydrates. We want to eliminate grains temporarily while we're on the advanced plan. Sugars, we're eliminating those. And we're eliminating all fruit except for berries, grapefruit, and Granny Smith apples. Why? Because those are the lowest glycemic. We want to get our sugar under control. Even healthy grains rapidly turn to sugar. For our proteins, we want to replace conventional protein sources with natural protein sources. And our fats, we're removing bad fats and replacing them with good ones. Now, in this process, don't forget that we're also eliminating pesticides. So when we're looking at the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list that we talked about last month, that's ewg.org, or just Google Dirty Dozen. Those foods you absolutely want to get organic because those pesticides on your Dirty Dozen will mess you up hormonally.
I was raised on frying like lard.
Yep. Yep.
I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Nope. You don't have to have it. Coconut oil, much better for you. And really, steaming vegetables is a much better way for you to maintain the nutrient density and those chains of food that are in there that your body needs to break down for the calorie and the energy, but also the nutrients inside there, so it just doesn't denature. So yeah, those three processes in there. Foods that you want to avoid in this are going to be your processed carbohydrates and sugars, the sugar substitutes, the trans fats, which have been removed from the market unless they were already there, in which case they're allowed to keep them there. They just can't make new ones, right? That's something the FDA did in your favor. Foods containing fats that turn rancid. So if it is something that's processed, usually that's where you get that denatured. And then any type of highly processed foods in general. So fortunately, you can make something like this. You just have to make it yourself to get there. That's a black bean chocolate cake recipe that I have if you want it. It's fantastic. Shopping. So this is really key. If you win the battle in the grocery store, you don't have to win it at home. Because you only go to the grocery store once a week, hopefully. Hopefully no more than that. Sometimes once because you forgot something. But if all you do is buy the foods you need in the grocery store and you win that battle, guess what your pantry is? Guess what your house is? It's a safe haven. You can eat whatever it is that you have there because you're not going to walk into the grocery store every single day. Now, you might have to have some self-control when driving by Wendy's and McDonald's and some of those other places, but if you don't buy the potato chips in the grocery store, you don't buy the Honey Nut Cheerios in the grocery store, and you don't buy these highly processed foods in the grocery store, you're going to win. So beyond that, steps that help you win that battle are to plan your meals for the week, to look ahead at the week and say, what do I want to eat this week? And then get the ingredients and prepare it. Make a list, take a list. If you don't take the list, good luck. Yeah, I've got a pretty good memory, but even I forget sometimes. Keep the basic stocked for meals on the fly. If you know you're going to need a lot of grass-fed ground beef, buy a whole lot of grass-fed ground beef. Stick it in the deep freezer, stick it in the back of the freezer, and then defrost it as needed. Stock up, especially when it's on sale. Spend more time planning and shopping than you do cooking. Because meals don't have to take a long time. One of my best friends is a crock pot. Instapot does kind of the same thing. It's just a steam cooker instead of, a pressure cooker instead of a crock pot, a slow cooker. Another thing is to read the labels. And so one of the keys to reading labels is to not read this label. This label makes it sound really healthy, doesn't it? Only 30 calories per serving. And guess what it could also say? Low fat. It could say 0 fat. So ignore this front side, other than knowing generally what it is. You want to turn it to this side. And generally, this stuff up here, again, doesn't really matter. What you want to see is what's in here. Yeah, probably. They're trying to hide it, right? And most foods that you buy that come in a package like this, a bag, plastic, even cardboard, it's going to be a list of like 15 or 20 different things. Half of the things are going to have numbers in them, chemical names that you don't understand. If you don't understand what the thing is, you probably shouldn't be putting it in your body. General rule of thumb, and it's not 100% of the time true all the time, but general rule of thumb, is if it has more than 3 items listed in the ingredients list, it's not going to be good for you. If it's got more than 3 items, you should probably make it yourself instead. And it's super easy to do now. I mean, especially with the internet. You just type it into your search bar, hit enter, and you get like a dozen different recipes, and they have star ratings next to them to tell you what's in there. And you can put keywords in there. Like if you want to do the Max Living chocolate cake recipe, guess what? Max Living chocolate cake recipe. Faster than texting Dr. Jake and say, hey, what's that chocolate cake recipe you were talking about? Can you send that to me? Like, oh, where did I put that? No, Google actually has, that's what I do when you guys text me, Max Living chocolate cake recipe. It's like, oh, yeah, I'll just send that link over. That's where I found it. So use the internet. It really does help. And use that word Max Living, because the website that we have, it has new recipes on there every single month. Yeah, like another dozen, because we're all the time, we're trying new stuff and we're making new stuff. And literally everything that you like can be made healthy. To have success on this diet, not only do you win the battle in the grocery store, but you take sideways moves from the unhealthy food to the healthy food. You know, you want an apple pie? Guess what? There's a recipe for that. You want a chocolate cake? Guess what? There's a recipe for that. You want a turkey club sandwich? Guess what? There's a recipe for that. You want huevos rancheros? Recipe for that. You just take these principles and apply it, and those baby steps, those sideways moves, they'll get you there. So read the labels, use the pesticide guide. That's the dirty dozen, the clean 15 list that's brought out. If you can afford it, if you're not, too tight of a budget, Dr. Oh shoot, he's on our TV earlier. I've been hearing him say it all week. He's the cardiopaleologist, or the paleocardiologist. That's right. Paleocardiologist. Jack Wolfson. He's world-renowned cardiologist. Before he became natural and married a chiropractor, he was the top cardiologist in Phoenix. Then he actually got good at what he was doing, married a chiropractor, completely changed his mindset on cardiology, and now he sees thousands of patients travel to see him in Arizona from around the world to help change their heart disease. Guess what he teaches? Same stuff that we do. His number one step is to avoid pesticides. He doesn't say curb the carbs, fix the fats. He would say all that stuff. His number one step, go organic. Doesn't matter if you're eating ice cream, go organic. Get those pesticides out, because that's really going to make a big difference. So yeah, those are your steps there. Label reading, do's and don'ts. I feel like we've covered that already. Myth, I don't need to take supplements. This is one of the biggest things I see, especially with people that garden their own food. Like, if you garden your own food, you're going to get more nutrients out of it. But unfortunately, our soil and our food supply has been so depleted of nutrients that a head of broccoli, right? Superfood, get as much of it as you can, has 30% of the nutritional content that it did in the 1930s. A head of broccoli today has 30% of the nutritional content that it did in the 1930s. So yes, great grandma could live off of the broccoli that she used to eat. She probably could have lived off of the broccoli and cheese sandwiches that she used to eat too, right? Because it was real food. And it was raised closer to the right way. But it's come so far away from that. So quality of food affects nutrient content. So organic's going to have more nutrient density in that, and that's supported by the research. But even more than that, if you grow your own food or you grow it in season, it's going to have more nutrients. But one of the big things that I see is that most of our foods are missing calcium, they're missing vitamin D, they're missing iron, they're missing vitamin B12, they're missing folate, and they're missing magnesium. So do I recommend you take a pill for each of these? No. A high quality multivitamin usually knocks off most of these things. So we have these essentials packets, they put it all together. These are all the things that I recommend because most people, most Americans, over 90% are deficient in those. The number one priority in this is a multivitamin. Get them high quality multivitamin. You'll knock off most of these nutrients. Most of them. Not all of them. You can't put everything in there. It has to synergize at some level. That's why I recommend additional to some of the stuff that's already in here, like B vitamins and vitamin D3. Next most important all winter was actually vitamin D3. But guess what? We're about to get outside more. So if you're someone that gets outside more often, vitamin D3 starts to lose its priority as we get into summertime. Should still probably get access to about 20 to 40 minutes of sunshine, mostly exposed during peak hours, meaning between 12 and 2, to get enough vitamin D3. So if you can't get that, get about 5,000 IUs on a daily basis. And then if you are getting that, flip-flop it with the omega. The omega is the next most important one. Why? Because most of us get way too many omega-6s and not enough omega-3s. And if you want to decrease your inflammation, get your omegas straight. D3 really helps with inflammation when you're deficient, but when you're not deficient and you're sustaining that well with sunshine and or a supplement, then omega becomes the next most important one. And then as far as the last two, it's magnesium and your B vitamins. This kind of is case dependent. If you're getting nuts and seeds and a lot of leafy greens, you're probably really good with magnesium. But if you're not getting nuts and seeds and a lot of leafy greens, you're probably deficient in magnesium because your body requires so much of it. B vitamins, if you're burning through or burning out before the end of your day and you're exhausted and tired and your brain's fuzzy, you're probably the B vitamins, you're probably deficient in one or multiple of those. And so this contains a robust mixture of those. One of the big things about ours that I love is that it's super bioavailable, but it's also not folic acid, it's actually folate that's in there as far as that part of it. And all of these really are the natural versions, the most bioavailable versions of these. I hate seeing people go get brand name out there because they're really just flushing money down the toilet with supplements. If you have a question about a supplement that you're taking, text me a picture of the label. I will evaluate your supplement for you. And I don't want you to flush money down the toilet. If it's good, I'll tell you to keep taking it. Right, Evelyn?
Yeah.
But if it's not good, I'll tell you to either donate it or throw it in the trash, right? Because I don't want you making yourself sick with bad supplements either. Let's kind of fly through this one. These are some general tips that you can take away. Really, what are the next action steps? Let's just jump to that. So number one action step is going to be to take this LRQ. So you have to do it online, unfortunately. You can do it from a smartphone. You can do it from a computer. You can take a picture of that and go to it later. You can go to that actual link. If you want me to text it to you, I can, but that'll give you your score. That'll show us where you're at most risk in your lifestyle. That's step number one. Just gives you the general information that you need. Do that every 3 to 4 months is probably a good idea in general. So keep that saved. Every time you do it, it'll send me your raw data and it'll send me your score. And then I can interpret that based off of conversations that we've had about what you're doing. Step number two is to actually read it, right? Read it, pay attention to it, either do what it says or follow up with me so that I can help you take those next action steps, help you prioritize what the most important things off of that LRQ is. Some of you need to take all the action steps. Some of you need to take baby steps. That's kind of case by case dependent. And so that may require a follow-up. And so some of you, that next step is actually, let's fill out a 7-day food journal or food diary and actually write down everything that you're putting inside your mouth, inside your body for the next week. And I don't care if you're super good or super bad during that week. It's going to tell me a whole lot about your habits in that process. Kyle and I did this, and we found out he wasn't drinking enough water. Yeah, still not. He's doing better than he thought he was, though.
Now, I say over 65 women started with magnesium and I forget.
Send me the label. It's too hard for me to say based off of brand name without having the label in front of me.
But
Yeah.
I have not had a cold in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I blame it on that.
Yeah, on the vitamin for sure. And it really does. When you get those raw nutrients in there and give yourself the right building blocks, things like vitamin D3 and things like zinc, they help to support a healthy immune system. Those are raw ingredients that your body needs to help build that up. So step number two, food journal or consult to follow up, just depending on where we need to be. And if we get in that consult, I'm like, we need to do a food journal. We'll just delay that and put that off. Then the step after that is just to do what you're doing today, right? You're learning. Who here learned something new tonight? I know some of you guys have been to like a dozen of these, so that's incredible that you can come to the same class and learn something new, even though it's really the same material. But that just speaks to how much we pick up at each of these classes, even if it's the same sermon, right? You go hear your same pastor preach, and he just pulls the same one from last year. Guess what? where you're at in your spiritual walk is going to determine what you get out of that sermon. All right. Same thing is true on your health journal or health journey. If you're in a different place than you were the last time I taught this class, guess what? You're going to get something new out of the same class. And so we change it up. You're not getting the same class every single year. I'm not going to teach this one again this year. So you're going to want to keep coming to all the classes. And guess what? I'm going to reward you guys for doing that. So every time you come to one of these classes, you get 15% off. Plus, you're a wellness warrior just by being here. If you don't already have your wellness warrior card, get that. That's worth 5% off of supplement purchases. So add that on to the 15% off you get. Then for every class you attend, you get an additional percentage off. And so by the end of the year, if you come to all 12 classes, you're starting to get over 30% off your supplement purchases at those classes. So helping you guys keep the high quality supplements affordable for that for sure.
Do we keep this coming with?
If you want to have a consult with me to go through your diet, then we've got some food journals up there that we can get for you. I'll have to find those. I didn't pull them out for tonight, but we'll definitely get you one, even if we have to print some new ones off. And then, yeah, the step after that is actually a special opportunity. We have a special guest here tonight. Some of you may not recognize Taylor. This is Taylor McGuire. I met Taylor because she's looking to enter a new part of her health career as part of her own health journey. And I'll let her explain a little bit about that. Go ahead, Taylor.
My name's Taylor. I'm a